3 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll be thinking about where you want to sit and heading that way.
I'll do it. My voice carries. Other than being on television and radio, it would carry.
We good?
Bunch of Baptists here. Everybody sits in the back. Well, you're right.
Church of Christ, folks.
Yeah, Church of Christ too.
Creek to do that too. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch. This is the town hall meeting that is sponsored monthly by the Williamson Inc. Our name for our affectional name for the County Chamber of Commerce. I'll get it out in a minute. And we appreciate our audience here at Columbia State this morning. We've got an audience on Channel 3 TV and also on WAKM, and we appreciate everybody being with us. Our guest this morning is Williamson County Mayor Rogers Anderson. He delivered a very lengthy State of the County speech Wednesday at the Chamber Luncheon. And we want to dig into some of the content there and maybe a little bit more this morning. Rogers, how are you this morning?
Very good. Thank you for the opportunity to be in here.
I appreciate your participation. We should have had Laura come and introduce you again because I didn't get good notes on that, and it wasn't in your written speech, so I don't have as good of background information as she did. But his daughter introduced him and covered all the public service positions he's ever had, including how many terms as county commissioner?
So there were, I started in 1986, so there was 16 years as county commissioner.
16 years as county commissioner. And now you're getting ready to start your 5th term
as
correct. County mayor. So that's another 16 years as county mayor that you've already served, and Lord willing, you'll serve another 4.
Well, it's been a joy, and I thank all the residents in Williamson County that have supported me over the many years. It's been a wonderful journey. So Williamson County has really prospered over the last 32 years, I guess, if you look at it in those ways. And
yeah.
But there's so many people here and out there that are watching and listening to us that have had an influence in our county.
Well, it certainly speaks highly that you've had what I would call token opposition the last, or actually in almost every re-election campaign you've had since you've been mayor.
You may call it token, but anytime you put your name out there, it's not token. So you run like you're 1 vote behind, and I think you remember that.
Yeah, I had a taste of it. It's always fun to guess where you're at in that, and we can can only imagine how much fun it is to be at the top. And
Well, there's several candidates here this morning. They're finding out that it's easy to express your message, but oftentimes difficult to get the people to imbibe it and enjoy it and really be able to savor what you're really saying, because it's fun to politic and to go out on the campaign trail, but now it's a different thing doing it day in and day out, 12 hours a day, standing at the polls and the door knocking, telephones, and costs a lot of money today.
I've got a limited experience in that, and I've always told people if I could just campaign and then win the election and turn it over to somebody else at that point, I would probably do it again. But I love the campaigning, but the serving is the tough part, and we appreciate what you've done. Your speech Wednesday started off with appropriately thanking our public service people, the people that have served the country in the military, our first responders out there on the line every day for us here in the county. One of what I would call one of the hallmarks of your service has been school safety and getting the SRO numbers up in our schools. 2013, you were, I think, in front of that effort to put SROs in every school in the county. And this year, it looks like you're adding more SROs to the high schools. Is that right?
That is correct. So, Dave, you go back to the incident that occurred in Sandy Hook about 5 or 6 years ago on that very tragic day in which several of our elementary kids lost their lives. And it just made such an impact on all of us here in Williamson County, whether you had children or grandchildren. And you hear the phrase, there's no more important thing that we do is to protect our children, develop our children for the future. And at that time, Williamson County had SROs, student resource officers, in a few of our high schools. But it was decided by Sheriff Long and the police chief of Franklin at that time, and both of the school superintendents, that we really needed to take a stronger stance in protecting our children and engaging the law enforcement community in each and every one of our schools. I don't remember exactly how many schools we've had that since at that particular time, but we're in the neighborhood of 45 to 48 schools now. We didn't even have a budget for the SRO to speak of at that time. And now there are 68 men and women that have to go through specialized training for to become an SRO, and then the law enforcement piece part of it. So there's 68 men and women involved in that, and that's 32% of the sheriff's personnel budget, which is a large expenditure that we just absorbed, and we're able over the last several years to be able to spread that cost out in different faction. But at the end of the day, it costs a lot of money, but at the end of the day, it also is one of those things that we feel is one of the most important things we do for our students. There's a debate, there's a conversation about, and State Representative Whitson, who's here today, they have that discussion up on the Hill in Nashville. It's been debated in Washington about personnel, school personnel, law enforcement personnel, whether they should be equipped with firearms. And we felt like at that time we'll let them have the debate in Nashville and Washington, but we needed to do what we needed to do here in our county, and we did it. Now with that, all schools now have different security measures in which that costs a lot of money. The cameras, the security entrances, the way you go in, the locking devices on the doors. We are looking at additional safety measures. Each one of those men and women that are SROs require they have an automobile. They don't always get the new automobile that we purchase, but they'll get that second tier step down. They have to be equipped with special equipment, and we have special equipment for each and every one of those in each of our schools. Because at the end of the day, they're there to do one thing, and that's to stop the perpetrator that may or may not get into our schools and be sure they don't get to our children. The side effect we've learned from the SRO is that our students really connect with that person in our school. And as students, as we all know, with children and grandchildren, they developed a bond, and that bond oftentimes they're able to share with the SRO of other issues that are facing our children. They share that, and then we're able to address that to the appropriate channels. So, yes, it has a cost, but it's one of those costs that you have to figure out how to do it. And I encourage all of the counties across the state. Many of them don't have the avenues nor the financial means of which to pull that off. But under the BEP program, the Better Education Program, there is some funding for high schools on a limited basis. But my late wife used to say that a lot of the times the SROs are needed more in the middle school when the hormones and the testosterone levels are changing as much as in the high school. So I do concur with that, and I'm very thankful for our community. It's not just the sheriff. The sheriff pays for it. It comes out of his budget, and it's his personnel, his training. He has the oversight. But if an incident should occur at the Franklin Special School District, which we fund those positions likewise, then you've got the Franklin Police. If it's Brentwood Police, et cetera, around to all of our cities. But you have to have a person that's a key point. That's Jeff Long, and he does an outstanding job.
You've got an excellent sheriff there to personal opinion there, but
I won't disagree because you got to drive home, and so do I.
That's right. And, we're just lucky to have all that. Just to put things in perspective a little bit, on our chamber trip to Denver a couple of years ago, I was impressed that the high school we visited out there had 5 SROs. And so the fact that we're funding 2 is not unusual in this world.
Well, their high schools, too, are, I don't remember the exact number when we went out there. Maybe they're considerable larger than our high schools. We will put 2 SROs in any high school that has 1,500. I think that's right, 15 or 1,600. We'll put 2 SROs that can coordinate. And, you know, SROs are just like the job in which the majority of us work. They get sick, they need time off, they have children, and et cetera, et cetera. So you have to have backup fill-in and supervisors and all of that. And that presented a whole new space concept. Where do we put 68 people? Now, all of them, for the majority of them, are in our schools, but who monitors? So all that's done at our public safety building down on Beasley Avenue. Had to take one of the offices down there and carve it out a place in which we can monitor the screens. So all of our schools are being monitored every single day, watching those students and parents and teachers that come in and go out, and it's taped so that we can go back in and look at that.
Right. I was visiting with the sheriff a couple of years ago, and we were talking about Centennial, and he just turned around to the screen behind him and clicked a button, and there was the Centennial parking lot on his computer there in his office, and so lots of resources there, and we appreciate it.
Well, and one of the things, touch on it before you go on, Dave, I think as our community has grown over the last 10 years, 7 years, you know, we're the fastest growing county in the state. One of the things, as you notice that, you have more court cases, mainly at the juvenile area. Not mainly, but a lot of the court cases we're seeing now at the juvenile, well over 50% of the cases are around domestic violence, divorce, and custody issues. And sometimes parents get their priorities mixed up and rush into a school and say and do some things that they shouldn't. And that SRO's got to be able to diffuse that. That SRO's got to be able to justify that, and then Oftentimes, it's not as easy. It's not just the violent side that we see, like that happened at some of the area high schools throughout the country. It's also that balance of just being a police officer at the time of a school. Things like you and I, because we're about the same age, we just didn't we have to deal with. Today, it's a different model that's out there.
It certainly is, and we could spend an hour talking about that, I know, but you covered 8 or 10 new facilities that the county either has on the drawing board or is considering or is getting ready to open. You mentioned that what you called the Triple J Task Force to look at the jail, juvenile, and what's the other J?
Jails, juvenile, and judges.
Judges, that's correct.
Acronyms are famous in government.
I'm glad you come up with that. But the biggest piece of that, well, maybe not the biggest, but the one that seems to be on the front burner was the juvenile justice portion of it. And it sounds like over the next couple of years, you're probably going to be building a new juvenile center. Is that?
So the speech that you are referring to, just about every speech that I have done, a third of the content is about the last 18 to 24 months. A third of the content revolves around what's going to happen in 18 to 24 months. And then a third of the content is actually what's going on in the day-to-day. And so over the last 18 months, there's been 36 men and women involved in their profession, judges, juvenile, and law enforcement community, public health. They're all part of the agency that affects our judicial system. I think most of us would agree that as an elected official, you should understand there's a difference between what our legislators do, that's the legislative side, the judicial side, and then the executive side, which I fall under. And those three branches of government are the backbone of our whole society. The judicial side of that has been broken down over the years, and now there's a juvenile piece. As you will remember, within the last 5 years, we have become one of the counties that have a juvenile judge, and Judge Sharon Guffey, and she oversees that court system. Prior to that, the circuit judges and would have to sign off or sit in, or we had what we call a referee. As our population has grown from about 183,000 people in 2010 to about 225,000 people today, then that student population has grown also. And so our court, our facilities, our place where we house all of the employees from monitoring the cases that we have, and they have to be in a very specific area, and a lot of files, a lot of information that they have to keep up with. It's confidential. We've just outgrown it. And so, yes, the juvenile center needs to be evaluated, and this committee went through that. We visited other places to get the best businesses practices. And so when all of that was said and done, now we go to the, we're down to the final 3 firms that would do a master plan for us and tell us where it needs to sit. We already know that the juvenile population and the adult population, they have to be separated. They're not now. Now, there's a dividing line, but I mean, there has to be a physical building difference between those different types of the juvenile and the adult population. Finding the land, finding a place that you could house that, we've got some ideas we have not zeroed on exactly where that will be, but it needs to be in the general area that they're at. Most of our communities do not want jails and juveniles and rock quarries and those types of things in their back door. I know that may come as a shock to you, But that's the way our society is. And so finding that appropriate place that we can transport, get people back and forth from the courtroom and into the administrative side. The jail's a whole different issue. Judge, Sheriff Long has indicated that within the next 3 to 5 years, the way our jail population is going, we will need a new jail. Our jail is 30 years old. It's wearing out. It's hard to find parts. We're making parts, literally making some of the parts to do it. It sits close by the rock quarry, and we still quarry rock, and so does Vulcan and some of the others every single day. And so that's a great location, but it also serves as wear and tear on your facility. The courtrooms are a whole different ballgame, which are all downtown. And so that the 36 members of that committee, about a third of them were made up of consumers, lawyers. I know Andy Marshall was involved from Puckett's, because if you move the court system out of downtown and moved it somewhere else, you just put a zero effect on the merchants downtown. Right. So they have an interest in it, in parking and the day-to-day operations of those businesses downtown. Because if you go down to the parking lot on any given day about 9 o'clock, there's no parking. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of economic drivers downtown. So we're having to balance that. We've got the old historical courtroom. We've got the judicial center we built 10 years ago that's almost at capacity. So figuring all of that out, getting people in and out. And I think it's important, too, to acknowledge that as our community has grown with businesses, which I'm very pro-business, never backed off from that, but when a business is tied up in litigations and having to wait for a courtroom space to be able to go in, it's costing them money. Right. And so you want to figure out ways to make it more efficient. Right. The state's done their part. Thanks, Sam, to Sam and Charles and Jack and Glenn. We're picking up another judge in September because of the volume of the 21st Judicial District. Well, that judge is going to be mostly working down in the lower counties, but that frees up a judge that will be needed here where he or she has been traveling down there. So there are moving parts to this, and it's just one of those things we have to deal with in the judicial side.
I remember when the Judicial Center was built, there was a big discussion about whether to build it downtown Franklin or maybe out on West Main. And the business community looked around at some of the towns around Tennessee that where the courthouse had been moved outside of the downtown area, and seen downtowns that just literally dried up. So I know the business communities.
Well, on a similar note, 1984 and 85, I hadn't lived in this community but about 5 years. I moved here in 80. When they moved Williamson Medical Center off from Carter's Creek Pike, where we're located now, it cost a lot of people their heads and necks. Because the community did not want the hospital to go out to this new place out close to 65. There was nothing out there except a barbecue place, and I think there was a McDonald's out there at one time. It came later, but it was just a field. Yeah. And that was in 1985 and 6.
It was a lot of moving parts anytime you move anything like that. Moving on, Animal Control Center is another new facility getting ready to come online. I didn't understand the timeline in your remarks, so I rearranged it a little bit.
That's fine. You weren't the only one.
To make it easier for me to follow, but Andrea Johnson's now our new animal center director.
She is doing an outstanding job. Local, lives in the Page, Bethesda, College Grove area. Just a super person with our animals. Our save rate is 96, nearly 97% of all the animals that come in, and that's a remarkable change. Andrea's doing a great job. Before her was Laura Chevalier, who went on to Nashville to be with the Humane Society. And over the last 6 years, we've changed the culture, we've changed the direction, and you can only do that through fostering of the animals. You can only do that for with a lot of help from a lot of other people. We were one of the state leaders over the last 3 years in keeping that needle moving up. Again, growth brings people. People love their animals. They're cute puppies and kittens when they move into an apartment, and then they become large animals, and dogs and cats, we call them. And we appreciate people bringing them to the animal center as opposed to letting them out by the convenience centers. That's a lot more convenient for us. But last month, the month of May, we received 300 cats in 1 month. And we just don't have those kind of facilities. So we had to put a lockdown on the facilities, and which causes a lot of issues. But we couldn't do any of it in our facility currently, which is over behind the old Yates Center, which is next to Franklin High School. And that facility is about 30 years old. We're at capacity. We're close to the flood zone. So we have purchased some land at the intersection of Carlisle and Charlotte Avenue. Land backs up to the TVA power lines, and we're Charlotte. Yes, thanks. And back up to the TVA power line, and where Mac Hatcher will eventually go. It's kind of a nice little quaint area, but we've got to do. It's in the county right now. It's in the unincorporated area, but we've got to get sewer there because fur balls and septic tanks just do not mix. So we've got to figure out that, and we'll have to address the wall, the rock wall, and things like that. But that facility should be up and going. I hope to push dirt on it in spring of next year, and we'll be using some best practices. We need a veterinarian room. We have a vet now and a vet tech. We're always looking for young people that are in that arena that are looking to look at animal husbandry in a different light, on a shelter side rather than a veterinarian side of the for-profit. Those are two types of ways you deal with the dogs and the cats. But we need all day long, if you go over there in the surgery room now, they're just snip some clips. And so my plea to anybody watching, listening, or being here is have your dogs spayed and neutered. I understand that's not always popular, but if you bring them to us, we'll do it for you. And there's an adoption fee, but we're not there to take on all of your animals. But it is expensive. But when those extra colonies of cats are roaming in an area, it's very expensive for us.
We've got a couple of dogs that we're gonna make that change this week. So it's an educational experience there. Moving on, I kind of pride myself in knowing what's going on in the county, but I didn't know about that. Also, another thing you mentioned Wednesday that I hadn't heard about previously is the new election commission headquarters that is getting ready to be opened up.
There's no more sacred thing that we do with the privilege of being able to vote, in my opinion, in government. I think we can run schools and pay for this and have our debates about how to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. But the privilege of voting is something we take very sacred. And this county will have one of the larger voter turnouts in the gubernatorial race and certainly the President of the United States race. And at the local level, we're seeing phenomenal numbers. But space is a problem where you come to vote for early voting. And the Election Commission under Chad Gray does a wonderful job of overseeing all of the elections and how it's done. But we do need to move out away from the administrative complex. We have a building that we've been leasing for the last 3 years. It's the old Lojack's building on Downs Boulevard. So if you're leaving West Main, turn left onto Downs, it's about it may be a mile down past HB&TS. I know you know where that's at. And it's on the right. It's a big building there that Lojack's had. We were renting it in the temporary stay of our fire department. So we can take that, convert that building. It's great parking, great access, and not have that traffic mitigation issues that we have when the candidates are running. and move the offices down there too. You try to keep your core offices in your government together that people use on a day-by-day basis. Car tags under Mrs. Anderson, and currently under Sadie Wade under the Register of Deeds, upstairs to property. And I mean, there are some of those core services that when you come there to do business, you want to be able to do it all. Chad and the State Election Commission, through the efforts again of the states, more and more people are registering to vote online, not necessarily coming in. Now, we still have a lot of people walk in the door, but for the most part, more and more people are registering online. And I think in time they'll figure it out. You'll be able to vote electronically too from your favorite device. They just don't have that ability to do that. It's a great move for us, helps them out. And it should be good for them. Again, that'll be about 18 to 24 months. It's called funding, but we've got it in the pipeline.
Didn't talk about this very much, but you alluded to it. You formed a sports authority a couple of years ago, and the ice rink that used to be over in the Cool Springs area closed down. And a lot of hockey fans in this area now. What do you think? Where is that going?
So the sports authority, is given to us through the state of Tennessee to create your own authority to oversee your sporting activities. And we looked at that for close to 2 years, had a group evaluating. We had an outside under the CVB, under Ellie Westman Chin, through the Convention and Visitors Bureau to just how much revenue is coming and going out of our county on amateur sports. And we focused our attention on that, hired an outside consultant, paid that firm, and basically after the 250-page report, which is on the county website if you want it, it said, y'all are crazy for not looking at getting into it as much sports activity you've got coming and going in this community. So we formed a not-for-profit sports authority. You know them as the people that help negotiate getting the Titans here and the Predators here in the Davidson County area. So we started with a 7-member group, and so we were getting them conditioned to, because they oversee the actual contracts, leases, and et cetera. And this helps government out, that I don't have to take a lot of those resources that we may need for some of the other areas. So far, this committee has been together about 6 or 8 months since the first of the year in 2018, and we've had the Predators come down and explain to them why they'd like to come here with sheets of ice. They call it sheets of ice. With Scott Hamilton being involved with the Predators, there's a huge need for individual ice skating activities. As you know, the Ford Ice Center over in Antioch, the old, was it called the Hickory Hollow Mall? They converted it to sheets of ice and a library. Now they're currently building another one in Bellevue. They're looking at Montgomery County to put some sheets of ice up there, and they're looking over in Wilson County. So they're very interested in getting more sheets of ice, not just for hockey, but for the free will, the person like yourself that wants to go out and do figure skating, put your uniform on.
That's a pretty picture. But
and as you do your flips, I'm sure by accident, it would be a wonderful money fundraiser. We have looked at other groups that have come to us. Rugby is growing.
So make sure I'm listening, right?
Yes. Didn't want you to fall asleep on me. So we're looking at rugby. Rugby International came to visit us. They would like to have a facility in our community for Rugby International, which would host the Olympics. Again, it's money. We've had the mountain bike folks come and talk to us. There's a huge need for that in the Middle Tennessee area for the mountain bikes, not motorized vehicles, but bicycles that do the trails. We've had a large group from outside of Dallas that put on the Allen Arena, and they come in and put shops and different activities in a like a shopping center. So there's a lot of interest. Of course, personally, I would like to see some. I'd love to see the Titans or the Predators or the new soccer put up their training facility in our community. So those are always good activities, good sports things that you would like to see. And I suspect you'll see some activity, real strong activity of that in the next year to 18 months.
Great, good. Time's flying by, and I would love to get into Williamson Medical Center, but we'll have to save that discussion for another time. The schools funding for new construction of schools. You have taken the lead. You maybe twisted a few arms around the county to get the cities to forego their portion of the new sales tax last year, which will help fund that that new construction that we need when we're growing so fast. The home builders are, you were instrumental in getting an additional $10,000 impact fee added to the price of a new home here in the county so that the new construction will help pay for the growth. But the home builders took exception to that. Where does that lawsuit stand that the home builders have filed?
So let me back up and kind of, there were many people involved in the educational impact fee that you're referring to, and the amount of the fee is based on the size of the square foot of the house. The larger the house, the higher the fee. And we did waive those fees for a nonprofit like Habitat and things like that. That's built into the law. Williamson County, as long as I've been around for those 30-some-odd years we've been talking about, they take education very serious in this county. They take it very serious, and they have said over and over and over, fund our schools and provide good quality payment to our teachers, and about 85% of the operational of the budget goes towards paying teachers and teachers' aides and all of the other labor costs that we have, including the benefits. There's not enough money in the operational side, so the capital side is the piece you're referring to early on that said, well, we got to pay for the buildings. No business in America would set up this model, but it was set up many moons ago, and it's kind of the way the boundaries are. The schools, once the county commission approves the budget, and their budget is 2/3 of the total budget of the county. It's just the math, and it's been that way for the last several years. Since I've been mayor, we brought it up from 58, we're at 64% now. But the piece that pays for schools, the bricks and mortars, the mortgage on the house has to be paid by the county commissioners. And that doesn't go into the school's till at all. It's just the way the law is set up. Now, you and your wife, you have to budget all those kids going to school plus the house note and all the other activities. Well, government doesn't work that way. It says, county commissioners, you're responsible for paying the debt on the school buildings once they're open. So if you add the debt onto the operational side of the school, it's 74%. So we run the rest of the government, the landfills, the jails, the courts, everything else on about 26%. Now going back to your funding model. So each and every year we're growing 1,200 to 1,500 children. This is why we've asked our delegation in Nashville, help us out with this growth issue that we've got. We're growing exponentially higher than any other county across the state of Tennessee. But there's no sympathy in the smaller counties that are not growing to work with SAM to help get more funding to come to Williamson County. I get that. Right. But we've got to find a piece that says it's good for you and it's good for us, because the fast-growing counties, it costs us more. For an example, this year, I won't go into the detail, but this year I started about $32 million just paying for teachers that the state of Tennessee doesn't recognize because we want smaller classrooms.
32 million?
32 million. That's 32 cents. Each penny is $1 million. I'm rounding. So it's on the tax rate. So that's $32 million, 32 cents on the tax rate, it's $2.15, just because we keep our classrooms smaller than what the state pays on a reimbursement. They have a formula, and that formula is good for Hancock County or Williamson County. So now we had to figure out a way to pay for all these schools. Dr. Looney and the school board have said we've got about 38,000 students now. We're going to have 50,000 students in the next 10 to 12 years. I hear all this rhetoric, we don't have a plan. Well, we have a plan. It may not be the plan they like, but it is a plan. And that plan says we've got to pay for 12 to 15 new schools over the next X amount of time, whatever time that is. And so we chose the avenue to ask the public to increase the sales tax from 9.25 to 9.75, state max. Fairview couldn't do it. Why? Because they'd already raised theirs. But the rest of the cities said, we're on board. And we've asked the cities, and really didn't have any objection from any of the cities except one, that said, if you give us your portion of that sales tax, we'll put it to the capital cost, building school buildings, for the next 3 years, give it up. And they all voted and said, yes, we will. Well, that's $60 million more that we can pay for this $400+ million school building program we've got. It has nothing to do with the operational side. It's all about bricks and mortar. Right. So that's how the mechanisms work. Where does the court case sound? Well, the home builders didn't particularly like, and I will say this, most of the local home builders were okay with it because they're selling houses just as quick as they can build them in this county. All of their advertising said you get those good Williamson County schools when you come and live in our community. And they use that advertising, and I see it all over the roads. But the out-of-state home builders had a different opinion. When you're sending money to Dallas and Louisville and in some of the other areas, they don't get to keep. I mean, the money doesn't stay local. Local home builders, for the most part, they understood what we were trying to do. So the Home Builders Association decided to file a lawsuit to negate what we've done. It is in discovery now. I suspect later this fall in 2018, it'll eventually go to court. In the meantime, we're still collecting those funds. And that home builder, we just can't spend those funds. So we've got about $13 to $14 million sitting in the fund that we can't touch. It would make a world of difference for these new people moving in. So we'll see how the court system, I suspect we will win. I feel very favorable about it. Our law firm feels good about it. But then there'll be an appeal. And then there'll be another appeal. So it may be another 18 months, 2 years before we can ever get a final verdict on this. And you would hope that we can negotiate and figure out some way to go rather than to tie it up.
Which judge will be hearing that case?
Dave, I don't know that I'd want to know that, and I'm not sure the judge wants to know that. That would be because the judges are local, right, and they've got to run.
That's why.
So that's why I say it'll probably go on up through the appellate processes.
Great. The lot of things going on there with the school system, and
but at the core of this is your teachers and the parents. That, you know, bricks and mortar is one thing, but every time Johnny or Susie walks through the front door, they need to get a quality education. And isn't it great that 96, 97% of our students graduate from high school? In this county, there's not a lot of democracy about children graduating from high school now. I grew up with a mother that way. There wasn't a lot of democracy in my house. Whatever she said, the boys, we just got in line and did it. And that's kind of the way our school system is here and with their parents. But there are many counties in Tennessee, and through the efforts of Governor Bill Haslam, the legislation, they're really pushing and promoting graduating from high school. This county, I think Kel would probably echo I'm a little short, but I think it's 55% of the people that live in Williamson County have a BS degree or larger. And so our parents believe in quality education. During the last 7 years, Dr. Looney has got the charts out, and he said $1 billion worth of scholarship money had gone to our children outside of the lottery money.
All right, if you want to talk about the fair, we got to move on quickly.
It starts a week from today.
We'll talk about that in a minute. But, and just talking about the schools, looking forward to this venue next month. Our guest will be Dr. Looney and his entire leadership team from the central office. He recently made a couple of promotions and a couple of changes, and in my opinion, probably has the rock star team running the county school system. We're going to get to talk to them and find out a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes there next month. Growth is, you alluded to a lot of growth in all your remarks Wednesday and then again this morning. And lots and lots of good things about growth. You mentioned the value of our property in Williamson County now exceeds the value of the property in Hamilton County, which is Chattanooga. We're rapidly approaching, I guess, Knoxville. How far are we behind your hometown?
I'm not sure that I could answer that. Reappraisal is going on up there, but we're 3 to 5 years away from Knoxville at the rate we're growing.
Taking over the third spot in the state. You mentioned the average home price, new home price this past month. Do you remember that number?
$568,000.
About $550,000 for the average house in Williamson County. Of course, that's good for all of us that already own a house, and we're thankful for that. So, again, lots of good things about growth, but it does create a few challenges. Traffic is high on the minds of my wife and me at certain times of the day, and you've got some plans in the works to deal with that outside of the city limits. Tell us a little bit about, well, don't tell us too much, but a little bit about that.
So can I break it down into 3 categories? You've got federal, state, cities, and counties. Counties being defined as unincorporated area. You cannot spend taxpayers' money in the county unincorporated area in the cities. Cities can't spend it in the counties. States can spend their money wherever they want to. With the Improved Act that went through a couple of years ago, it's a state level that you're paying higher gasoline taxes. Now we're seeing more revenue coming in which Sam and all the guys up on the Hill have to deal with, and how that money is dispersed across the state of Tennessee. Many state roads, cross-state roads. Give an example, Triune, Highway 96 and Highway 41, 2 state routes, but the state for many years wouldn't fix that. They didn't have the money. They required the unincorporated area to pay that through a contract. Mac Hatcher is another the extension of that. Franklin's put in $7 or $8 million, I think, worth of money to help push that on along the line. And then the state does the basics. They don't do the nice, pretty poles and the lights and all that. And whatever they do for Williamson County, they're going to do in Hancock County. And I get that. So you have to have a balance. Balance is the key word in everything we do, from our families to government, figuring out how you're going to pay for it. The roads in the unincorporated area of our town, we have about 750 road miles of unincorporated roads. With the last new road we built, other than a subdivision road, was Linwood Way. That's going across the mountain there at Hillsborough Road. It comes down on Franklin Road. That was the last new big major road we did, and Charles Sargent and I were involved in that back in the mid-'90s.
Downs Boulevard was the one before that, I think.
And Downs Boulevard was the one before that. And then as soon as we built those, cities annexed them. So there's not a lot of love between cities and counties when counties spend the money to build a road and then the cities annex it. That's just not the way things happen. That hasn't happened in the last 15 years, but we oftentimes have to be reminded who's spending the money and who annexes it and takes it over. We've committed $25 million over the next 7 years to repair and widen and improve intersections in the unincorporated area of our county. Arno Road, Linwood Way, Clovercroft, and Sneed Road. Those 4 roads are all 100% unincorporated roads. They intersect with states or cities, but the main length of the road is in the unincorporated area. We will first look at improving the intersections, and Arno Road is has more accidents on it than any other road we have in the unincorporated town. Why? You got a high school and a lot of flow-through traffic. All of those roads I mentioned are roads in which people are coming from Murfreesboro, getting off at Arno, driving through it to go to work in Cool Springs. Sneed Road, coming from Bellevue area, driving down Sneed Road, hitting Hillsborough Road, Clovercroft. Linwood Way is the one road that takes you from Hillsborough Road, Grassland area, back over to the Franklin-Brentwood area. We've committed $25 million, which is nothing. But over the next 25 years, we've committed $125 million worth of road improvements and expansions and new roads in our county. Annexation plays such a major role.
How old I'm going to be in 25 years?
They stopped putting age limits on you, Dave, at a certain point, and I think you'll reach that. You and I both will. When you and I are 90, still sitting up here, they'll quit asking you how old you are. But I will say this: cities and counties and states have to figure out a way to work better. This county and the city work as good as any place across. I honestly believe it across the state of Tennessee. I serve as the mayor's caucus, and I'm telling you, the sheriff and mayors in some counties don't speak. That doesn't happen here. The city mayors and the county mayors in some communities, they don't even speak to each other, because there's that much difference in their philosophies. That doesn't happen here. I mean, for an example, in schools, Brentwood stepped up year before last, 2 years ago, and wrote a check for $2.4 million to help us out with our school funding. I mean, we all work together, and that's the only way a community survives. Roads are the same way. When we do Arno, we'll be touching the state of Tennessee at 840. We'll run into Highway 96, which is both city and state. And so if we can't all figure a way to make working the sand pile together, right, it's a bad day. And
that's a great transition into one of the questions I wanted to ask, which is maybe off the reservation a little bit, but a lot of border issues between where the city limits meet the county. And a lot of discussion of the state has changed the zoning, the annexation laws, pretty much made the urban growth boundary irrelevant, it appears. And so the cities are really challenged to figure out how to deal with the edges of their town. Does it make any sense to consider a metro government?
I think our opportunity for metro government has passed. I cannot imagine Brentwood and Franklin being on the same page in their developmental quality of life issues.
Leave Brentwood out of it. Let's just say Franklin.
Well, they would be, all right. So who do you want me to include? Franklin? They've got to.
Given we only got a couple of minutes.
I don't know how you'd have a consolidated government between Brentwood and the county. Is that who you're looking at?
Franklin in the county.
Nah, that ain't gonna work. So come on, that's just conversation piece. That Franklin and Brentwood, Spring Hill, Thompson Station, Nolensville, 10th fastest growing city in the nation, and Fairview. They are all different, but you know what? That's diversity. That's good for our community. That's a good thing to have. And the elected leaders, these new ones running and the old ones like me, we just have to figure out how to live within the framework we've got. But I don't like metropolitan government. I've never liked it. I've always said that. But you know why? You know what suffers most in metropolitan government? Let's name them: Shelby County, Davidson County, Hamilton County, and Knox County. What's the first thing that always?
Moore County.
Huh?
Moore County. That's
a home state rural county. If you had Jack Daniels there, you'd want them as a home county too. The four big ones. What's the number one suffer that suffers the most in all four of those? Just think a minute. What do you think it is? What's the audience think? Public education. Such a large number? Well, we'll just take $1 million or $2 million from them. They won't miss it. Look at all those school systems. Look how big they are. I don't like it. Look at the big cities all across the nation. If you want a community, if you want a county, if you want a state, you build the best education you can. Period. And you build your model around that, and mamas and daddies will find you, and jobs will find you, and it will work. Now, it gives you all kinds of headaches, but it beats the alternative. And Williamson County is that model, and we should, long after I'm gone, they ought to stay with the public education as the backbone of your community. And don't give away your tax dollars like these cities do. They don't have to do that. Just say no. But they're hurting in these metropolitan areas because the schools are run down. And I wouldn't want my grandchildren to go there. So if I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to ask somebody to. So fund your schools, but figure out how to do it and ask the people to help you. So pretty simple.
Metro government probably not going to happen.
Not under my watch.
Fair starts next Friday night.
Friday night, 5:30, 6 o'clock. The fair comes off. Whole bunch of new rides, new people. 2 or 3 brand new acts. If you're a, oh boy, I forgot. If you're a Jurassic Parks, is that it? Am I saying that right? Jurassic Park. If you're a fan, you better get there on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Is that right, guys? On Tuesday, they're only there half the fair. We had this event on the weekend at the Ag Center several months back. Had 32,000 kids come through, but they're at the fair this year. Then we've got the circus act this year, the horses, and the one that was up close to Opryland. So those 2 new things coming, Diane and Terry, big deal. And of course our livestock, our beef and sheep, and I mean, as you know, you raise cattle. It's one of the largest in the state, and the premium being we'll pay you to show place. Last year we wrote checks to close to $80,000 to our boys and girls in the community across the state. It's a big deal. We'll see a lot of people out there. Hope we get good weather.
The fair is one of the best in the state, and you and I share a love for it. So.
Now, I can editorialize in the last minute or two that Dave started off as the first fair chairman when there were 6 or 8 of us conjugating around trying to figure out what do we need to do for ag tourism. And somebody mentioned the word fair. We jumped on it. Dave said, I can do that. So we made him chairman. He did it for 2 years. He lost all of his hair, and it used to be dark. Did a great job, by the way. Hate to see him go.
After the second year, everybody started wanting to have more committee meetings, and I went, I don't think I can do that. So
I understand.
Turned it back over to Rogers, and he's done an excellent job. He and Diane.
Never been in the red. Always been in the black.
Yep. Good, solid operation. I apologize for our audience for not leaving time for questions for the audience, but I wanted to be sure and cover all of these issues because I know all of them are important to various people. And I think Rogers will be here for a few minutes if you want to ask a few other questions. But really appreciate you being with us this morning, Rogers. Enjoy kind of digging under the surface on some of these issues and understanding better what you're dealing with, both financially and politically, and it's always an interesting conversation. We want to thank our sponsors that make this possible every month. Vanderbilt University has been a big help for several years. AT&T also helping give Aspen Grove Asset Management a plug for making it happen on WAKM, and appreciate Tom Lawrence and his team for making it happen. Creed Henderson and the team from Channel 3. We you know, getting to know everyone here at Columbia State's been a great opportunity, and getting to enjoy this new facility, and we enjoy being here. The Encana Apartments is also very nice to have coffee and pastries here. So if you weren't here for that, you missed out, because they looked really good. I didn't eat them though, Tammy. And let's see, I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Kel McDowell led the charge from the chamber staff this month and made things happen. Griffin's on vacation, so Kel had extra duties, but came off very smoothly. We've got early voting going on downstairs, and if you haven't voted yet, you might want to just make a swing by the early voting site downstairs. Kel, when is the election? Election Day, August 2nd, early voting through tomorrow, and just make your vote count, and hopefully be back here with us next month. Looking forward to having Dr. Looney and the team from Central Office here to find out what's going on with our school system. Thanks for being with us. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Thank you, Dave.